Gary Vee really does give Google Plus the short shrift in his chapter about emerging platforms. Remember, his book, Right Hook, was written back in 2013. But he rightfully starts out pointing out that Google Plus's big selling point is for a website's SEO, and that's very important for websites that depend on placing high on search engine results pages. But then he turns around and he says that you can't get much on Google Plus that you can also get on Facebook. Now, there's a couple of contradictions here. First of all, Gary doesn't provide any of the examples on how to throw a right hook, where he has provided dozens in his Facebook chapter. So if that's true, that Google Plus and Facebook overlap so much in functionality, should have been a breeze for him to at least present us with a couple of good examples and bad examples of how to throw a right hook on the Google Plus platform. He also talks about Google Glass being a game changer that can perhaps replace mobile devices. Well, as of March 2016, when I did this review, Google Glass is still under wraps, and it's being tightly monitored internally by Google. If anybody can create an invention that allows you to communicate using Google Glasses, well, it's going to be Google, which is the third largest corporation in the world, according to the 2015 report from Forbes 2000. But on the other hand, Gary doesn't talk about Google Analytics, which I think are absolutely crucial to being able to throw a right hook, to be able to jab as well. And it's really one of the premier tools that Google specializes in. And I would have really liked to have seen some of Gary insights on how to use Google Analytics to be able to throw the right hook and to jab, and to use the Google Plus platform more intelligently. Gary Vee also goes through some other emerging platforms, emerging, he says, back in 2013, like LinkedIn, which he comments is more of a serious platform. It's more like a professional hub, or the library that we go to for really serious researched information. It's also, LinkedIn is a place where you can use for long copy. Now again, Gary Vee doesn't provide any examples of how to use LinkedIn to throw a right hook or to jab. He doesn't even show any examples of misfires. So he's basically left us on our own. In fact, he's used a lot more generalities in this particular chapter. He says things like, you can afford to be less flashy on LinkedIn and more serious and thoughtful. Well, that's pretty abstract, although I think the spirit of what he's saying is true. He talks about Vine as being this 7 second video platform, but he himself says, for now, these platforms offer little opportunities for right hooks. Someone is going to figure it out. Why not you? Well, Gary, I spent $34.95 on this book about how to jab, 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 right hook, expecting that you would tell me how to do it. So in a way, Gary Vee kind of hustles here. He kind of, rather than showing us how to right hook, jab, and right hook, he does somewhat of the alley shuffle and sort of dances around the main point or the main thesis of this book. Can you imagine stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson and experimenting with throwing a right hook? I would suggest to you that you would not last very long and that the outcome would be very, very bad for you. Similarly, some of the other chapters at the end of this book, uh, Gary starts talking about things like effort, and he draws an analogy to um, the story of Buster Douglas, who defeated Mike Tyson. Buster Douglas was out of shape for his first defense of the title after he defeated Mike Tyson, and because Buster Douglas was out of shape, he lost to Evander Holyfield. And I guess the point there is that, you know, you have to put in the effort, you know, and even if you're going against a competition that outweighs you by 3 times and is built like a Mack truck, what matters is the effort that you put into your work and the quality of communication. You know, he, he kind of is fudging it here because there is effort, but there's also skill. And Gary Vee has a lot of these skills. He's a proven social media expert and storyteller. And the fact of the matter is that on Facebook, Gary has about 510,000 likes as of March 2016. But on Google Plus, he has 2.3 million followers. All right, so that tells me that Gary has had some success jabbing and throwing the right hook on Google Plus, and even on LinkedIn. Gary Vee has 527,000 followers. So he's having success. I would have liked it much better if Gary had shown us some concrete, specific examples of how he was successful jabbing and throwing the right hook on these emerging networks.